think we are.
Okay, welcome.
Still on mute.
Yes.
I think we're ready to go.
Ready to go?
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, welcome everyone to our public briefing session. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditions of the Ngarluma people on whose land we are gathered here today. Item 2 is a little bit about this meeting. So this is a public briefing agenda. So the purpose of the public briefing agenda is for councillors to ask questions and obtain additional information relating to items for consideration at the next OCM. There are no decisions made at a public briefing session. However, the public briefing session is still held within standing orders. Orders will still apply, and councillor questions asked by councillors are to be answered by the CEO or a person nominated by the CEO. And this meeting will be live streamed, and the recordings are copyright material and cannot be used without permission of the CEO. 3 is the record of attendance apologies, of which we have all councillors, and we have Councillor Nunn and Councillor Simpson online. 4 is public question time, of which you have no public questions. 5 is petitions, deputations, and presentations, of which we have 1. What do we call it, Annabelle? Deputation? Statement. From Annabelle. So, Annabelle, would you like to?
I start.
Yeah. Make you sit. You can remain where you're seated, or you can get to the lectern. It's up to you.
It works nicely at the lectern. So, Annabelle, if you can state your name and your suburb for the formality of the meeting.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Annabelle Little. I am based in Peaks Creek. I am referring to item in your agenda 10.1, which was in relation to a bus seat, which was requested at the electors meeting in March. 8 weeks ago, on the 24th of March, a little girl was brave enough to come to the council meeting and speak to the councillors to make a request to install a seat at her bus stop. That little girl told of how she would stand waiting for the bus in the heat with a heavy bag of books and maybe a laptop that, let's face it, probably weighed more than she did. She talked of how the waiting students took ownership of their stop, taking it upon themselves to weed the overgrown bus stop in the hot summer sun. 8 weeks later, 8 weeks later in this meeting agenda, council's response is to tell that little girl that it will take them another year and $40,000 to put together a plan on how to put seats and possibly shelters at a bus stop. That's another year and 2 months later from her original request. That little girl likely doesn't need to know how or why you need to write a proposal or a priority system or a long-term budget plan. She's not concerned about you needing process or reports to conduct business. She just sees action or no action. In this case, no action, and certainly not in her near future. Today, I took the liberty of costing a park bench from Landcare, similar to those that you use in your parks, and requesting 3 quotes from local builders with a quick phone call. And it would cost under $10,000 to see if we could install a seat at a local bus stop. When you vote for this motion, and I hope in your discussions, I'd like you to think of what the cost has been for the refurbishment of the annex, a climate-controlled, beautiful City of Karratha annex building where they've just had their perfectly sound building repainted, recarpeted, new computers installed, and desks for all with at the push of a button go up and down so they can stretch their weary body due sitting down all day in their climate-controlled building. I ask that you compare that to the position that we put our children in, waiting in 40-degree heat with no shade, no seating, and weeds prickling their bare legs. And ask yourself if we really can't afford to install 1 seat for a little girl that's brave enough to speak for her community. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Annabelle. And if people didn't have questions on that item, I'm sure they do now.
Oh, not for me, though. Yeah.
Thanks, Annabelle. Very good point of view. Okay, so then 6 is the declarations of interest. So if anyone has any declarations of interest, please read them out. Huh?
Is that me not going to be here?
No. Any interest in any of the items on the agenda, in particular financial? proximity? No. All right. If that does change or you think about it, next week at the OCM, we just need to absolutely be sure. Okay, 7 is the confirmation of minutes from previous meetings. Which we can decide on next week. Item 8 is the announcements by person presiding without discussion. There's a range of meetings that I had through the month of April. Anyone have any questions? Meetings I had? 9 is corporate and commercial reports, with 9.1 being the statements of the period ended 31st of March 2025, and the officer's recommendation on page 8. And there's the council received the financial statements for the financial period ended 31st of March 2025, as shown in attachments 1 to 4. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I do. On page 12.
Page 12.
The outstanding debts report. We still have the IF Foundation on there. Yeah, and last month's agenda, we decided to write off some of the bad debts that were untenable, I think. And I thought that was one of them. I'm just wondering why it's still on there.
Yeah, so if I can just, I might just, can I refer that to you, manager? So we do have the manager of financial services, so I'll ask her to respond to that.
If foundation wasn't it that report? No,
It was too.
I think someone has found a number for someone at that foundation, so they're pursuing that now to see can retrieve it or not. And if it's not available anymore, we'll then look at writing it off. But for the meantime, we're still going to keep it there and pursue it if we can. Put it to the end.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate that.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions on 9.1? I had one on Telstra. Just interested to know what the dispute is with an invoice. There's annual service charges for utilities at the Karratha airport. It's just that Telstra have obviously put it in a dispute with an invoice that we've issued with them.
Would you like to take that on notice, manager? Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll take that on notice. Thanks.
Okay, I'd just be interested to know.
No problem.
Okay. 1.2 is the list of accounts from the 1st of March 2025 to the 31st of March 2025, with the officer's recommendation on page 16. And then as the council received the list of payments totaling just over $9.7 million, as detailed in attachments 1 and 2, being made up of the trust payments, which is nil, big pay payments, FPOS payments totaling 6.2 million, direct debits totaling 6,000, credit card payments totaling 46 million, and payroll 46,000. Sorry, let's correct that. And payroll payments totaling 3.4 million. Does anyone have any questions on our list of accounts?
I just have one in relation to some debt we wrote off in last month's meeting, and then in these payments, we've actually got that same person being paid for a Take Your Business Online grant. So I'm happy to provide some information there. Just thought it'd be interesting to investigate that.
Well, look, so can I follow that up with you after the meeting and we'll find out a little bit of information? I think you're raising a good point there. So let me look into that one, councillor.
Yeah, and more appropriate as well to take it offline.
Yes.
Individual.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions on our list of accounts?
Yes, we've had one on page 18 of 32. It was for Signs West. It was the Playground Communication Board for $27,000. I just wondered, was that for the actual install as well as the sign, or just seems like a large amount? I know we had it done. I know we spoke about it, but I've just seen the bill and I thought it was pretty expensive. Could have some more information on that if you can't provide it now.
Can I take that one on notice as well, councillor? Thanks.
Other questions? All right, 9.3 is our investments for the period ended 31st of March 2025. The officer's recommendation on page 19 is that the council receive the investment report for the financial period ending 31st of March 2025. Does anyone have any questions on our investments?
I do have one, Matt, on page.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Just in relation to the loan for Stroke Property Group, I just wasn't sure or understood the repayment plan on that being 5 years in. I'm just wondering, should we be seeing a repayment schedule there of that loan, or is that? I just think we're reporting on it.
Yeah.
Page 24, actually.
Page 24.
Yeah. I've got 25, but schedule of loan group.
No, I've got a screenshot, so I don't have the page number. Sorry.
Yeah, so my understanding is that there are payments being made on that, but can I come back to you in the briefing notes, and we'll actually provide you with some detail about the terms and also the repayment schedule. Thank you. Yeah, great. Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, just for those in the room, because council also makes a good point. Like they've drawn down 3.8 million of a 4.1 million loan 5 years in. We don't know exactly where they're at on their payments.
Yeah, sure.
How much they've paid back. We
And
know,
we know the terms of the
we
payment.
know there's $300,000 left to be drawn down. So I think it's great for council to understand where that's at.
Very happy to provide that info. Thanks, Councillor.
Okay, any other questions on our investments period of March?
Well, it's not. I'm not sure. I'm thinking, how do I word it as a question? I suppose it's more of a statement of concern. Can I?
Okay.
Yeah.
Love questions of concern.
It's on page 24.
Yeah.
And it is about outstanding leasing balances.
Right.
And it's to do with Lowe's Cafe.
Right.
Just it makes me nervous because they've extended so much that to be ahead of the game for us.
Yeah.
And to support them so they don't go into arrears. Yeah, it's only 1 month, but I really, it's a very valuable asset to our community.
Yeah, sure. So your concern is about making sure we're supporting that tenant while they're going through
If it's
an expansion and growth of
yeah.
their business, and just make sure that they're supported through that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
That's exactly.
I'll take that comment on or that question as to are we supporting that?
Are we? That's right. Are we?
I'm sure, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, but I'll definitely take that on board. Thanks, Councillor Furlong.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Is there anyone else got any other questions for our investments?
Yeah, same page. Not just tenants that have expanded, existing tenants as well. It's not the first time I've seen Fiorita on there.
Yeah.
Are we overcharging for that property? Do we need to look after our small businesses more?
Look, as you're aware, Councillor, we've had quite a few conversations with Council about the rates that are struck, and it's actually the direction of Council to administration that we manage this as a commercial business. So the T's and C's are set using commercial benchmarks. It is actually so we receive external advice on that and managed accordingly. In terms of the particular tenants, some of them manage their cash flow sort of very carefully, and sometimes they will push their terms out to suit themselves. So just the fact that an individual organisation is on a payment register doesn't necessarily mean that that's an indication that the rent is too much or that the business is in trouble, right? It can just be an indication that there is an invoice that is awaiting payment. So look, I'm comfortable that the rates that we're paying are correct. And we also have had a conversation with Council about the fact that Council needs to be very clear about which hat they're wearing. Are we wearing a community hat or are we wearing a business investment hat? If we are wearing our business investment hat and we start to modify and change the rents according to community principles, we then start to actually distort the behaviours of the commercial property market, and we start to actually disrupt how the commercial property market operates within Karratha. So it's there's a number of different things that council have discussed previously in workshops, and it's something that we need to be very careful of and considerate of as to, are we managing it as a community asset or as a commercial asset, and to apply the correct principles at those times.
Could I just check to check that it's my understanding and my commercial real estate acumen is probably not very high, but the rates that are set are quite competitive.
Yeah, look, I think I suppose I believe they're competitive, but I think the key thing is that we do go through a rigorous process with an external advisor as to what is the appropriate and competitive rate for that property within this market.
And that was reassessed when we appointed the new management.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know what's happening in a business either, you know, like especially hospitality. You know, every hospitality business in this city has just gone through summer. All right, and you get the hangover of summer, and not as many people frequenting your business. Sometimes the business stuff happens. The chiller breaks down. Your air conditioning gets it. You prioritise your bills, and yeah, you know, it's tough. Business is tough, and business is tough in the Pilbara. So yeah, I think it's just a watching brief, isn't it? And like our CEO suggested, that we need to make a decision as a council in the future how we wear in that space. Like, it is a commercial building, and we treat it as a commercial asset. If you want it to be a community building, we'll have those discussions about if we want to turn that into a community building where we have more say. But there is some risk around that when you start going into that space.
And through the mayor, if I can also point out, you've got examples there of non-employment from the Minister for Works. So the Minister for Works is not going to be an organisation that's having cash flow problems or is, having difficulty paying, but they are on the register because, they've got perhaps an administrative delay or perhaps they're arguing about what's on the invoice, whatever it might be. But it's an example that you could say that's an example of a tenant that's not going to necessarily be in financial difficulty, but they are on the payments register, just as another example.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, any other questions on 9.3? Investments? No? All right, moving on to 9.4, which is the advertising of the 25-26 differential rates.
So we've got a presentation on this one. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, okay. The executive have got a presentation, so.
And I'm going to
run through.
I'm going to share the glory.
You can share.
Thanks, Amber. Thanks.
Thank you. So this month we've got the 2025-26 differential rates council workshop through council, and then we've got an agenda item to advertise the differential rates. So the budget headline numbers, so from 24-25 to 25-26, the operating expenditure, which is business as usual operating expenditure, has increased by 7% in the proposed budget. Our own source revenue, excluding rates, so 2024-25 to 25-26 has increased by 2.5% to 82.6 million. Our own source revenue coverage ratio, which is the ratio that covers costs through own revenue, which is not rates, is 1.59 proposed 25-26 budget. Our rates as a percentage of operating revenue is 51% for the 25-26 budget. And then this year's capital expenditure, we're looking at 61.3 million That program is going to be funded through 3 different types of funding sources. So we've got externally funded 3.2 million, reserve funded of 46.6 million, and municipal funded of 11.5 million. Any questions?
Yes, so we have a question from Councillor Nunn online.
Can we share the screen, please?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Nunn.
Thanks, Councillor Nunn.
Sorry. I'll go to the next slide. And
Just to, I wanted to discuss with council and also for members of the public that this year has been quite a difficult year in terms of rate setting, and the reason for that is that we have gone through a revaluation process. And what that involves is that the valuer general, which is the state government, goes through and makes decisions as to what the gross rental value is of the properties. And they then advise us of what that revaluation number is. Now, what I want to show you is this particular picture here, and for people who are watching on live streaming, you won't be able to see this, but we will publish it for you.
It's on page 29 of the agenda.
Thanks, Councillor. It's on page 29 of the agenda as well. Is that there's actually been a huge variation in changes to the gross rental values and I'm particularly focusing on residential because I think it's mums and dads who are particularly exposed here, although we do know our small to medium-sized businesses have challenges as well. So this heat map shows you all of the suburbs down the side, and then across the top you've got the percentage changes that are occurring for the GRV values. So where you've got a red colour, it means that there's a high number of properties in that particular box. And so what you can see, if we look at the Bulgar example, there's 833 residential properties that have had a GRV value change of between 5 to 10%. There's another 62 properties that have a GRV valuation change of 10 to 15%, another 9 where it's 15 to 20%, and so on. So this is the value that is provided to council, and this is before we've even gone through a process of setting the rates. And then as soon as we apply the rate in the dollar, that gets multiplied by that, and then that's how your rate is struck. So so this has been a real challenge, and you can see that there are actually some properties where they are on the other side of the ledger where they have benefited. So there are properties that have had a reduction. If we look at nickel, there's 532 properties that have had a GRV reduction in value of between -5% and 0%. There's another 23 that have had a reduction of -10% to -5%. So where we've got a challenge is if we apply exactly the same rate in the dollar value as last year, some people will be 5% down, some people will be 5% up or 10% up, 15% up without the council having done anything. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us to determine what is the best way to actually manage our rate in the dollar. So it's highly variable. And I think you can see there that it's, as I said, quite a challenge. Now, if we go to the next slide, if we applied a 2.5% rates increase, which is what's in our long-term financial plan, that picture becomes even uglier, if you like. It becomes more complex. And so we've put the contrast in there so that councillors can see that it then throws more properties into a really difficult rate increase. So we can see there that as soon as we apply another 2.5%, in Bulgaria we have 670 residences that now are in the 10 to 15% rates increase range. Now, we know that we've got people who are struggling with cost of living, so this is something that's outside the city's control, but we also understand we need to be really responsible. So one of the things that we are suggesting is that we actually apply 0% increase to the rate in the dollar. So the council actually makes no change to our rate in the dollar, and any change that flows through to an individual's rates comes from the GRV. So there will be some people who benefit in a rate reduction, some people who will see an increase as a result of that land gate increase. Now, our rates revenue actually does go up, and the main reason for that is that it's driven by some changes to the value of large industry. So think about some of those really big industrial companies that are on the borough. They have had revaluations, and so they've had rate increases, which are driving the difference. But what we've done as a strategy is we're actually saying we're going to absorb these changes. We're going to keep our rates revenue basically on a par for this year. We're going to try and soften the impact to the mums and dads, and but we will see an overall rates revenue increase because that's driven by the heavy industrial area. So you can see there that overall our rates revenue, because of those changes, does go up 12%. So that's the overall sort of bucket that we generate from rates. And as the manager mentioned a moment ago, that represents 51% of our operating revenue.
So just for clarification though, the proposal's only 0% for GRV residential.
It's 0. Well, actually, the manager will go through. You're exactly right. So my comment around the 0% was I was talking about residential, but we will go through each of the categories now. So thanks for clarifying that, and we'll talk about. This is what the administration is recommending, that we go out to advertise and seek community feedback on.
Do we do questions now or at the end?
It's up to you, councillor. Now's fine.
That 12%.
Yeah.
Where's that come from? Is that like 12% more than 58? Because shouldn't that be like 70? 70.9, 12% more? Only looks about 8.
Maths.
Well, yeah, there's 12% there, but from that to that, it's not a 12. It's yeah.
That's your picture.
Oh, it's my picture. Did I do it wrong?
7.
Oh, no, it does wrong.
7.5.
That was my picture.
So it's not 12%,
Let me
or it
double
is,
check.
and the graph's wrong.
No, the values on the graph are correct.
The values on the graph are correct.
So the 12's wrong.
Percentage is wrong.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was my graph, so I'll take the full responsibility for that.
Right, just the figures just didn't.
You're very switched
Right.
on. Thanks, Councillor Jenkinson. But I'll double check that. I may have had a typo for that. I'll take ownership for that.
Either way, it's gone up 12%.
It's well, go back. I'm gonna step away from the 12% because Councillor Jenkinson may have called me on the that, but it has gone from 58.9 to 66.39.
Yeah.
And some finance person will tell me what percent.
The majority of it being strategic industry.
And it's been driven by strategic industry. Yeah. So thank you for that.
So the proposal that we've put forward to council for the rates for 25-26 is bringing the baseline at a 0%. We've put GRV residential, airport strategic and TWA all at baseline. So what we've done with baseline is just put the new values in and bring the yield basically as close as possible back to what it was from the previous year. The issue with GRV, airport strategic industry and TWA is that we are limited by the multipliers.
Yes.
So airport strategic industry is at the 2 times multiplier, so we can't go any higher on that one. And the GRV TWA is at the 4 times multiplier, so we will be going to the Minister for approval on that one. For the GRV commercial industrial,
UV pastoral, UV mining and UV strategic. We put a 5% increment in there just to cover the loss of rates yield in the GRV space. So even with the 5% on GRV commercial industrial, that category is still below what we yielded last year on that category. And the UV pastoral mining and strategic has gone up because it was, apart from the large revaluation we had in strategic industry, we haven't had any significant movements in the UV space. So our proposal is to have the 66.388 million based on those highlighted figures in the model.
And is it safe to say that even the proposed increases, say, particularly in the commercial industrial, that there'll be some businesses or landlords that will have that same huge fluctuation from land values?
Correct.
So even with that, some of them might still go down or some might go up?
Correct. Yeah. And that's all based on evaluations that we've come in.
And just to go back to my math error, or sorry, my graph error, so it is a 10% increase from the 24-25 yield of 59.5 up to what we're proposing, which is that yellow number of 66.4 million. That's a 10% increase overall in the size of the bucket.
Yeah.
But broken down in terms of those figures there.
Does small business sit in the commercial industrial the same as the big industry?
No. So in the GRV commercial industrial, you'll find there's more of the businesses that like out in the industrial area, some of the town centre businesses, whereas the large industrial is more in the strategic industry, the UV strategic industry. So all of the really large businesses are in there.
So it's important to see, even though we've added 5% to the GRV commercial industrial, we're actually receiving, was it roughly $300,000 less there, right?
That's due to those fluctuations.
It's due to those fluctuations that sits underneath it, yeah, which is about the value.
My concern is that commercial industrial at 5% for small business is a big jump for small business.
Well, what you'll find, councillor, though, is it depends on what the
business is.
It depends on what the GRV value, like the valuation is underneath.
Yeah, for example.
So if that's gone down, the 5% is not necessarily 5%.
So how many in realistic terms have actually gone down?
Yeah.
Overall.
So we can give you the distribution. We can give you a look at the distribution for that category. Would you like to receive that in the briefing notes?
Yeah.
So we can. Do you mind doing that, manager? So I'm giving her work. Yeah. I'm just checking. Yeah, that's right. But so you can kind of have a similar look, which is that heat map as to what the level of exposure is for that group. Yes, we can definitely do that.
I have a question. So this is more for the community who are watching online, because GRV values are always kind of messy to understand. And my question is, how does the city intend to communicate the advertising and differential rates? How is specifically going to do that?
We've got a rates communication plan in progress. So we've started already putting out some comms saying that we're doing a GRV rate value this year, and we're asking for people to change their addresses and etc. already. But we've got on the 26th, this goes to OCM, and then on the 28th, we've got our program that will be rolling out, and that will be they will have all comments surrounding how we've obtained that GRV and how we've distributed it. And we also have letters that we will be sending out to ratepayers that are affected most. Yes, good idea. And I think I think that's just a really good transparent piece to say, this is what you had last year, this is what we're going to have this year, and this is the reason why.
That's fine. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So we're sending out some letters for that as well.
Thank you.
With letters we send out, is there a way to make it quicker than 7 days?
What do you mean, posting?
Yeah, it seems like when we send stuff out, it takes 7 days to get back to us. Is that because it goes Perth first and then comes back? I've had correspondence from a few ratepayers regarding the developments where the date on the letter is like a week before they've actually received it.
I can't tell you what Australia Post is doing, fortunately. All we can say is that we're using that method to communicate with people as best we can.
Are you thinking email maybe? Or
Don't know.
Look, I think that the practical nature of it is that we have a property and we're sending the notice to that property, right? So we've got that database is there.
The thing is, as well,
The email, we don't necessarily have people's emails. So as soon as an email can only be a backup process. It can't actually be the main
the
communication.
property owner might not be the one residing in the property.
Correct. And we have such a, 2/3 are actually investor owned. So we need to actually advise the owner as opposed to the person in the property itself.
Any other questions? No questions of the presentation. Is there any questions of the report in the agenda?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No. Satisfied with that? Okay. We go on to 9.5, which is the membership to external advocacy bodies. Would you like to speak to the CEO or Mina?
No, yeah, look, I'll speak to it, Mayor. So I think we have, the Mayor and I are involved in a number of organisations that on behalf of the city, and we thought that it was actually appropriate to bring that forward and to have that considered by council in terms of, is council still comfortable with us attending those organisations, and that we're, that it's a good use of our time. The Mayor and I actually just need to go through that document and actually make sure that the staff have prepared it for us, but we actually are the ones who are heavily involved in it. And because we are still working on that paper, we're going to defer it until next month, and then we'll have the Mayor and I will have had an opportunity then to review it and make sure that it's actually reflects our views and because we're really the ones attending those meetings, aren't we?
Yeah, it's about being transparent about, over the years we've been a part of, various membership bodies and committees and that. It's just high time that the whole council understands, what those bodies are, what they do, what their objectives are, and whether it's worth us being a part of it or not. So I'd like to, I think we'd just like to get feedback from the whole group as to our direction in the future, and whether some of these bodies are a part of it worth our time and effort, and also they all have a membership fee as well. It's payable. Fruits.
Just understanding that a bit better. Thank you, CEO. Will we get feedback from you? Because I suppose some meetings are only as good as the engagement that you get during the meeting. So
true.
That's right. There's some bodies you're a part of that you think, right, if it's a good organisation, maybe it just needs someone to drive it and lead it.
Yeah.
So look, I think in terms of the way that we'll prepare the paper is that I'll prepare it to reflect what the terms of reference are, to give clear guidance as to which organisations are involved, how much our membership is, and the sorts of things that we work on and advocate for. And then I think it would also be appropriate that the Mayor shares his own personal views, because he's often the representative on behalf of council.
I've got the casting vote.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that would be my suggestion in terms of how we approach it.
Okay, 9.6 is the payment protection framework for that was part of the annual electors meeting notice of motion. The officer's recommendation on page 37. And that is that council one, acknowledge the motion put forward of the annual electors meeting on the 24th of March 2025, item 4.2.3 from N. Selton relating to payment protection for local subcontractors. And 2, support a review of subcontractor payment protections. And 3, the further report will be presented detailing outcomes of the review. Does anyone have any questions?
Should there be a date on when that review should come back to council? This is just as a very open statement.
So, look, I'm happy to take that question on notice and discuss it with the team involved. So perhaps if I could come back to you in the briefing notes about that.
I guess I've got a question. So, just for recollection from that annual electors meeting, do you think the city will be looking at a process where we directly pay subcontractors?
Look, I think there's a number of different layers of protection for subcontractors. So I think there's layers of contractual, I suppose, contractual barriers and contractual requirements that we need to fold our way through. So I think I'd probably like to take that question on notice, but to fold that into the review, because I do think that's one of the options we should be looking at, and that's effectively what the motion was expecting.
Yeah.
But I think we need to just make sure that we look at that option in the contractual and legal and procurement sort of regulations that we're required to work within. Not saying no, but I'm saying it's probably not an easy question to answer off the cuff. I think.
It'll just be the ideal situation.
Well, that means then we're employing them, not employing.
Well, correct. Yeah, then they become a direct contractor. Yeah.
Oh, it's just when there's a dispute.
Yes,
Where
I
it's-
understand that, but then is that not getting into people's business? You know, if we're going to pay subcontractors, why don't we just have a contract with the subcontractor?
Yeah.
Because we might not want to manage the project though either. So you still don't have project
Yeah.
lead, but you want to have that security to make sure that the subcontractors are paid should there be a default or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, but no, that was a request that was made, so
Yeah.
we will look into it. 9 points. Sorry, any other questions?
I can say in the example that actually generated this problem, the city actually did go through a detailed process of amending contracts, using funds that were held to then go and directly pay subcontractors that hadn't been paid. So we did find mechanisms, and we did end up stepping in and making those direct payments, but we had to kind of navigate through some legal complexities to get there. But in the end, that's actually what happened.
Yeah. Okay, 9.7 is to readopt the 23-24 annual budget with the office recommendation on page 40. And there's a council imposed the following differential general and minimum rates on gross rental and unimproved values for GRB, residential, commercial industry, airport strategic industry, the TWAs and workforce accommodation, pastoral, mining, other and strategic industry. And it's basically to adopt the annual budget as contained in the attachment 1 for the 23-24 year, and also that council approves the refund of 31 ratepayers in the GRV airport strategic industry category due to those rates initially being levied at a greater than 2 times the lowest rate in the dollar, as followed in the table below, which is a list of Karratha Flying Services, Police WA, BP Australia, Viva Energy Aviation, Thrift Car Rentals, Hertz Australia, Avis Australia, Budget Rent a Car, Helicopters Australia, Woodside Offshore Petroleum, Babcock Offshore Services, Aspen Medical, Yarra Pilbara Fertilisers, EDL LNG, Express Freighters Australia, and Virgin Australia Cargo. So if you're one of them companies, you will be receiving a refund from us. And there's another page. Oh,
Are you going to?
well, I just think we're online. So
Okay,
I've
very
got
true. Okay.
Indara Digital Infrastructure, Legade, who runs our cafe bar at the airport, Woodside Bar, Hannah's the Iron, Quadrant Energy, Rogue River Iron, Venturex Pilbara, Woodside Energy as opposed to Woodside Bar, Hannah's the Iron, Northwest Aviation, Bristow Helicopters, and Airlink will receive a refund of nominal amounts totaling $27,539. Does anyone have any questions on the readoption of our annual budget? No. only that we need to do it before we do the next one. Councillor Nunn.
Just interested in process moving forward. This is definitely something that we have done in the past, changed the percentage imposed sort of at the last minute. So from an administration perspective, just curious as to how we manage this moving forward so that this doesn't happen again.
Good question, Councillor Nunn, CEO.
Yes, look, I think very good question, Councillor Nunn. We have felt quite burnt by this experience. So it was very frustrating that we had to go through such a, I'm going to say, bureaucratic process to get something fairly straightforward resolved. And the state government kind of gave us guidance through the State Administrative Tribunal that we had to re-adopt the budget in order to address this shortfall. In terms of preventing it from happening again, what we've done, the manager in modelling the rates has been very, very careful about where the tipping points are for those differential rates, because it's actually a model where you move one and it impacts the other. What we have done is been a lot more careful in identifying where those levers and dials are. And then as council is making their decisions, we will have all of that information to hand, and we will be able to advise you if there is an outcome. So we weren't as clear of the impact at the time the decision was made, because the decision was made in the meeting and we were sort of doing it in situ. But what we will do from now on is actually have that information to hand, so council will know what the boundaries are and what those boundaries are that will actually kick us into this sort of process. So we'll have that clear.
Thank you, CEO. Any other questions on 9.7? We're adopting our annual report? No? All right, moving on to 10, community experience reports, with 10.1 being the bus seat and shelter installation from the annual electors meeting. And the officer's recommendation was on page 45, and that is that council acknowledged the motion carried at the March 2025 annual electors meeting requesting the installation of seats and shelters at bus stops throughout the city, including weed management and upkeep of the stops. And 2, support progressing the request for seat and shelter installation through development of a comprehensive bus shelter plan proposed in the 25-26 financial year. This plan will include an audit of existing bus stops and establish a prioritised delivery program. Now, I was actually very organised this meeting. I've written down my questions, the summaries, the positives, and Annabelle came in, and my question was actually the same. Can temporary shelters be installed in high need areas before the plan is finalised?
Ask the manager, sorry, director.
No, that's right. Through the chair, I think when the admin was responding to this item, it was responding to the motion which was carried, which was to install seats and shelters throughout the whole city. Obviously, this is the approach that we take for a lot of new infrastructure. It's the same approach that we take for new footpaths and footpath lighting. For the city to install bus shelters and seating at every bus stop, it's probably about a $16 million project based on the cost to deliver recent bus shelters in a couple of locations within the city. So it's, and I guess also when we're looking at $16 million, we need to weigh that up against all the other community infrastructure projects that we are delivering. So we have $100,000 on next year's budget for bus shelters. If we can identify a high use bus stop, we could look at progressing a bus shelter. Obviously that will be in consultation with the strategic projects and infrastructure team and their ability to resource that in amongst all their other projects, but it could be considered.
I do take that point that Annabelle raised around, child's education and not knowing as adults that when you get problem with government, takes years and years to get things done. However, if there was a way to work out, oh, this is a very high use bus stop area and we can prioritise it. I think it's a worthwhile exercise for the person that took their time to be part of our annual electors meeting. Does anyone else have any other questions? That's the roots.
Through the chair, if I could just find out, is this something that we could work with the public transport to figure out? I'm not a user of public transport, so I'm unsure if it is a tap on, tap off type technology that it would be quite easy to gather the data to find out if it was lots of use in a particular spot.
Well, let's ask our kids. I don't know what my son does when he goes in the school bus.
The bus driver's being lazy at the moment.
Yeah,
It's more effort than what it's worth trying to ask them for their cards.
because it's free now,
Yeah, it's free.
Right.
so they don't.
The state government still wants them to do it so they can say, we're legends.
Yeah.
You could ask the schools how many have cards, bus cards,
My kids lost their cards a couple of years ago.
or registered cards.
Yeah.
There'd be a way to find the information quicker.
Through the chair, we do have a project next financial year to look at exactly that. Obviously, we wouldn't want to delay this plan pending that review. That was more around locations and making sure that they are in the right places across the city. We can have a chat to the Department of Transport and find out if they do have that data, and we could potentially do a really quick audit. But we do have 100,000 on the budget for next year, so that can be definitely considered.
They could get 10 bus stops if Annabelle's figures are correct. But,
Yes.
Great. I have a couple of questions now with those figures that the director just mentioned. So 16 million, but we've only got 91 bus stops. So is that saying it's $175,000 per bus stop?
So there's 15 terminals as well.
It says 91 bus stops, including 84 bus stops and 14 terminals. So it says 91 in total. But that means $175,000 per
It's about
bus
100.
stop.
Through the chair.
150 on
It's about 150 per bus stop.
Yeah.
Including
Shade.
Right, and that my other question for that then is, have we, or is there consideration to natural shade opposed to man-made shade? Because I'm sure a tree won't cost that much to install per
So
bus
we
shade.
can consider that if we can get mature enough trees.
Through the chair, it's 91 bus stops plus the 14 terminals, so it's 105 total.
Thank you.
So that's what 105 comes on. And for the trees, then that's potentially something that could happen.
It'd look much nicer, I think, too, considering trees keeps coming up in our community surveys. So it's another opportunity for us to listen to the community and utilise that. And I'm sure, I know there's a bus stop right in front of our location, and I think a tree would be much nicer than a man-made shade as well.
On the pricing still, that 150,000, have the pricing gone up? Because my understanding of the last two that we built was 250,000 for the two of them.
Through the chair, we had funding to support the rest of that cost, the balance of that cost.
So they were about 150,000 each. On that as well, I think it was never planned for a bus stop to be like those ones we built in town outside the hospital and things.
Yeah.
If you have a look at the bus stop outside, it's along Maitland at the end of Bulgara there. Can we get a price on what that cost? Because that's your basic chair and shelter, not to the extreme of what we've just laid in the middle of town.
Through the chair, we can do that. But it's a next week's meeting.
So just to clarify, you're asking if we can de-scope it and look for something that's a little bit less.
Yeah, well, I know the bus stop she had in mind, and it was the one down Maitland there, not one of those ones built like in the middle of the town near the shopping centre. and
Correct.
the-
Yeah, they
the hospital
were
there.
they were more expensive again.
Yeah,
Through the chair, they were about 250
They were
each.
about 300
Yeah.
for the wraparound
yeah.
one that's opposite the supermarket. So yeah, I think you're talking. I think the 150 is for the standard one, but we can confirm.
But we'll confirm.
Yeah, we can confirm what the design is that sits alongside that price.
And can we get a price on the square culverts as well? And reach out to Darwin Council.
I'm sorry, is that about bus?
Bus shelters, yeah. They've taken the culverts that you use in, crossovers, the square ones, and just place it upright like that, because the vandals can't destroy them as much, and then you've basically got your wall and your roof and your structure.
Interesting.
And then you only need to throw a bench, screwed into the base of it.
Through the chair, it would require cyclone region D.
I'm pretty sure cyclone rated in Darwin.
And it would require a building permit and things like that.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
but I
I
mean,
think, so
It seems like a
councillor-
simple solution for some of the ones that aren't in prominent
Yeah, so
visual areas.
Yeah, you're offering a really interesting alternative, and we're always welcome creative ideas. So your suggestion is that a sideways culvert could be an alternative model, and that you've seen that in Darwin. So
Yeah, I've been told about it. I'm trying to find pictures, but I can't find one. So I'm going to
okay.
reach out and ask him to send me one.
Yeah, well, if you can provide us with any details, I mean, always looking for a better cost and more innovative way of doing it. So fantastic, send it through.
I have one more question.
Yes,
That's right. Just around, perhaps could the city maybe communicate with this young lady, maybe via letter, to clarify that the motion that we passed was indeed about 91 bus stops, not one bus stop, which from Annabelle's deposition or deputation this evening, I understand that she was talking, or she maybe intended to talk about just one bus stop, just her bus stop. That is obviously important to her. But what we're dealing with, the motion we've got, is 91 bus stops, which is a very, very different project to one bus stop. And perhaps we could just clarify that with the young lady so that she doesn't think that we're deliberately taking, longer than we need to and making this bigger than it needs to be. We're dealing with the motion that we passed.
Yeah, look, I definitely would take that feedback on board. And with council's guidance, you can build one a bus stop. If you decide that that's how you want to prioritise it, that's.
Don't know that would be taking a fair and balanced view.
Well,
but
councillor, if that's how you want to interpret the elector's motion, but yeah, I think as an administration, what we would say is, okay, there is a network of bus stops. There's going to be some that are more used than others. Let's understand that. Let's plan for it. Let's budget for it. Let's roll it out in an organised fashion. So yeah, that is sort of the way we would approach this. I do take your point around communication with the person who did the presentation. Absolutely.
I just guess being mindful that she did make the time and the effort as a young lady to put forward something that's important to her, and perhaps the clarification might appreciate the clarification on what we're going to now try and achieve in that space.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I suppose there are a few questions as well. So you're looking at the mass, obviously, even if we just covered the school stops, so times 150,000 each, so we're looking at 12 million to install that many bus stops around the city of Karratha. So I suppose I agree to try and get what's the high usage one. Obviously, if we are going to spend money doing these, then try and prioritise those first. So if we can get some information from Karratha or whatever they're called now.
Well, we have a 10-year footpath strategy.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm thinking. There's something we need to implement that. And then obviously moving forward too, we also need to consider our future city growth with new subdivisions. And if we're going to go to all this investigation, also can we think about a bit of a matrix as to include those future growth areas, to include bus stops for future planning as well. So it's something that's factored into the budget, or is it something that Development WA can consider when they're building new subdivisions? Not just, obviously need to look at our bus stops at the moment. And then also, for instance, a good one is Bainton Drive, one of the bus stops that's already there. It's still a bus stop. There's no shade. Again, there have to be at least 15, 20 kids standing in that bus stop every morning. It's on Bainton Drive. There's nowhere for the bus to pull off safely. So, you'd almost need to think about the way that traffic's pulling into certain areas in those high yield bus stop areas for safety for the kids. So, maybe that's something. If you're going to look at all our bus stop areas, then maybe look at the safety factor as well if you're going to spend the money and doing it properly.
Councillor Nunn, looks like you have a question.
I have a couple. Does that number that we're throwing around in terms of how many bus stops we need include all our outlying towns?
Through the chair, yes.
Is the city responsible for all of the assets in Wickham and I'm not sure about Dampier? does some of that still sit with Rio Tinto, or are we responsible for all of them?
Through the chair, there's a number of bus stops that are not public bus stops in Wickham in particular, and they are Rio assets. The city is responsible for all shelters in a road reserve. However, there are parts of Wickham that are Rio's responsibility. So we'll need to work through that land tenure as part of this project.
Sorry,
Okay. Sorry, what was that?
A little bit complex.
I just said this, apologies, sorry. We know how long it takes when we're dealing with our stakeholders in land use.
Yes, we love it. And I just probably it was just really more of a comment in terms of the commentary around trying to get data out of Karratha. There are a lot of people that do use our public transport service, particularly from Roebourne, particularly people with disability. Some of our seniors probably are also using no one in Wickham in particular who has been asking me for a bus shelter for about 8 years. So much as I appreciate everyone's want to try and solve all the problems, I think there's a lot of problems, and I would much prefer that we end up with a plan.
Councillor Nunn?
Does that funding, Emma, that we talk about, what we have now, include this program, this BSSP funding that the PTAs they support? They have that funding for shelters. Is it like,
Sorry, through the chair, it doesn't. It's not considered as part of next year's budget. No.
and so do you have to apply for that fund for an individual shelter, or can you apply for a bucket for 91 shelters?
I'll have to take that one on notice, so I can give you a response for next week.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Question. Any other questions on?
What was the projected total amount again for 104? 16 million. So,
Yeah, sorry, estimated.
so the 12 million extra we're going to receive in rates from strategic industry almost covers the bus stations.
If that was the only.
It almost
That's a
covers.
question.
It almost covers lots of things. Yeah, good.
Just on page.
So councillor, are you suggesting that we make?
Well, the money's there.
Priority?
Isn't that one of our core responsibilities?
It's.
Councillor Swafford?
Sorry, mine was just on page 48. In the financial implications, it looks like the sentence isn't finished. That's all, sorry.
Long-term financial plan allocates an allocation of 100 per annum from. Yeah,
From next financial year.
Sorry, I knew that was only minor, but.
No, thank you, we'll fix that. Sorry, that's fine.
I suppose the last thing, are we getting caught between seats and shelters? You know, surely putting in seat, which Annabelle pointed out, is $10,000, whereas putting a whole shelter, if we had a tree, back to the trees, we love the trees, then you could put the seats in before the shelters and then work through the whole process of getting the shelters. At least that'd be a seat and a
Can we have a price for seats only now, initially?
I think
Yeah.
Oh,
So through the chair,
Yes,
we were
yes.
responding to the electors' request, which was for seats and shade. So we can consider that a cost, I guess, for seats.
But can we have a price in case we're going to do an amended motion?
Yeah,
Or
we'll
not?
provide it.
That will provide the
Yeah,
prices.
yeah.
That's not.
Sorry, just a quick one. Can we also get clarity on how many actually just need seats?
If there might be shade or anything.
Through the chair, I think that
Answer that.
within the timeline for us to provide a response, we would have to do a physical audit.
Next road trip, bus shelter hunting.
I think, so through the chair, I think the difficulty is we're starting to get into creative problem solving, which is one of the reasons why we would go through an investigation and kind of come up with a design and sort of plan it out, right? So what's happening at the moment is we're sort of starting to jump at ideas. They're all great ideas, but that's why we sort of normally do a planned approach at the front end. We're responding to the electors' request, so that's the piece that we need to close out. But if council would like us to come to do a piece of work, which is to say, hey, these are the different options, these are the different prices. This is what we would, let's do a plan that extends over a few years, and let's get all of those 81 bus stops under shade. Like, that's a fantastic initiative. Let's do it properly and have a plan and plan it out. So I suppose I'm just cautioning we can pull a few of these bits and pieces together, but there is a well thought out suggestion in here, which is let's put a bit of time and money into it and actually plan it out, do it properly.
But they're not all of your ideas have now been captured.
Well, that's right. I love creative ideas. It's fantastic.
Okay, let's move on, shall we? 10.2 is another exciting one, the water park development from the annual electors meeting. The officer's recommendation on page 49, and as the council acknowledged, the motion carried at the March 25 annual electors meeting requesting a water park, including water slides. And 2, support the delivery of a feasibility study on a splash pad or water park at the Dampier foreshore and a water slide at the Karratha Leisureplex in the 2025-2026 financial year. Are there any questions?
Yes. Can we not spend money on a feasibility study for the Karratha Leisureplex water slide because there's already been one done? Can we please pull up the old one that has already been done so we don't spend more money on redoing it?
Through the chair, there hasn't been a feasibility. There was a internal pre-assessment that was undertaken.
It was pricing and everything in that though.
$7 million.
Yeah, it was a pre-assessment, so it wasn't a full feasibility to determine whether it was something that we would like to progress in its proposed form. But if council would not like us to proceed with the feasibility, then
I just think we use the information that we've already spent money on. We spent time and money.
And just decide yes or no, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think.
Well, it wasn't detailed as.
Oh, it was 2 years ago, wasn't that long ago?
Through the chair, I'd say about 4 years ago.
It's longer than that.
Yeah, or more.
I'm just saying we seem to be spending a lot of money on sorting this out, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I think if it's just extra money we don't have to spend, can we please pull it up at least and address the information that's already been given to us? There was a lot of work done already. So even if you could bring that into it and spend less money on doing that to come to a feasibility on it, that would be correct.
Through the chair, so just to clarify what the administration's approach will be here, we've got money within the long-term financial plan to deliver the KLP slide in 2 or 3 years' time. So we're proposing to bring that work forward to consider that with the broader recommendation to include Dampier splash or water park in that piece of work. Dampier has come out through the community infrastructure plan, but what we will do is the feasibility will look at a needs assessment. So we'll be engaging with stakeholders, looking at what they're trying to achieve, what their aspirations are, and define the type of water park. So we'll have a scope. Then we'll look at site selection across the whole city. Once the site's been determined, we'll undertake a full feasibility, which will look at the cost to construct and also the ongoing operation.
Yeah, and that's what the
we can use that pre-assessment information as part of that work. But yes, so it's bringing forward 2 projects to undertake that a bit more holistically.
And the idea of water slides at the Leisureplex, that looks in junction, I imagine, with the improvement plan for the Leisureplex as a whole.
Through the chair, yes. So that water slide was part of the KLP improvement plan that I think was endorsed by council a number of years ago. So it's just the final 2 actions to be delivered there.
Kelly, that's important.
Councillor Nunn?
Do we have to move this motion this month? I am concerned that we are making a decision based on a community infrastructure plan that is currently out for comment and potentially will change. And I am concerned that Roebourne is being excluded from this opportunity to be involved because Roebourne currently has no splash pad, no beach, and a pool that is only open half of the year. But that's obviously not getting picked up until we get the feedback back from a community infrastructure plan. But if we then move this motion tonight or next week, we're going to have to come back to it. So I'm just curious, can we delay this, or is there a time frame that we need to have considered the motions from the electors meeting?
Through the chair, I think we can consider Roebourne as part of the feasibility when we look at site selection. So we will be looking at potential sites across the city. But yes.
So clarification.
So yes, you can defer if you choose to.
Clarification, the suggestion of a water park doesn't necessarily mean it's just one water park.
That may be the case.
That may be the case.
Yeah. So that means we need to reword the feasibility of splash pad or water park at Dampier foreshore.
So through the chair, what we're proposing is we already have 2 projects identified, one being the KLP water slide and one in our draft community infrastructure plan. So we're proposing to use a provisional amount of 100,000 in next year's budget to prioritise a water park over other projects, I guess, that may be delivered as part of the community infrastructure plan.
And would that be part of the whole Dampier master plan, rather than just sticking a splash pad here and not?
Through the chair, the Dampier master plan, given the result, the outcome of the tourist park feasibility study will be reviewed in the first part of next financial year anyway, so it will be considered.
Chancellor,
How did it end up in Dampier?
you mean the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, the splash park. How did it end up in Dampier?
Through the chair, that came through from feedback on community.
Okay.
That's in the community infrastructure plan that's currently out for comment, and there's
The thing that's had 63 visitors and 0 people actually leave a submission.
that's the document that is currently out for, but the actual input into that had a lot of input. So I would encourage councillors to definitely socialise that document and get feedback, but that document had a lot of input into it. And you're aware of the process, councillor, because you've sat through
just
around that.
A small, opinion poll was done on whether it was Karratha or Dampier that they wanted it, and 84% have come back saying Karratha out of 109 respondents.
Which survey, sorry?
Just a small survey asking where they want the splash park,
Sorry,
whether it's
which
Karratha or Dampier, on the community ratepayers page.
Okay.
So it shows 84% of the people that have completed that are wanting it in Karratha. So how did we get on track of it being in Dampier?
So through the chair, that infrastructure item was identified through community engagement. I don't believe it came up in any of the discussions around Karratha. There's still opportunity for the community to provide feedback on the community infrastructure plan, and definitely encourage you to encourage others to review it and provide their input. Through the feasibility study, though, we will look at sites, and there will be community engagement through that process as well. So if there is strong appetite for it to be in Karratha, then that will be considered as part of the feasibility.
And also, the term water park is very broad too. What is a water park? Is it a splash pad? Is it, what exactly is it? So, those questions to the community as well when we get through the infrastructure plan, assessing spaces within our community for water play, will determine the size of the variety of what it actually looks like and what can be done, because a water park is a very broad sort of statement of what can be delivered.
The other thing I'll just caution councillors is that ad hoc surveys are very difficult for us to actually take on board. We really need councillors to be encouraging people to use the engagement processes and those opportunities. When we're doing this, they're the opportunities for councillors to actually feed all of this community feedback in we capture it, we put it into a document, and then we replay it back to the community to say, have we got it right? So the way that is really helpful for us to have your leadership in seeking community input is to take that community infrastructure plan, take it back out to the community and encourage people to use the community infrastructure plan process, which is currently open for feedback. And if we've got it wrong, then that's the place to actually to direct that energy and that feedback into, because that then is actually a really holistic process that is an opportunity for everyone to be involved. So I just sort of say we've just got to be really careful, because heading off and doing ad hoc surveys, we can't actually necessarily even understand what the question was that was put, or what was the scope that was put, or which community had access to that survey. It just raises a lot of questions. So yeah, that was just a bit of feedback.
You see, Councillor Roots.
Can I get an indication if administration are happy to reword 10.2, that it's a little bit more vague, just so I can see what we may need to also support? Just to potentially strike out that I feel like it's very deterministic to say Dampier foreshore when it is a potential, and we found out tonight that it is a potential for it to be somewhere else in the LGA.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's two ways of doing it, isn't it? The CEO administration take the feedback on for next week, or next week we had the opportunity to do the amendments.
Yeah. I think the point that Councillor Nunn has made and that Councillor Roots has made is really, it's spot on, in that and Councillor Johansson's picking it up as well. We've got a community infrastructure plan that's still being worked through. So let's bottom that out, and that's actually the valid approach which we've put out to the community, and we've said if you want to have community infrastructure, this is the place to do it. So it probably I'll take that offline and take it on notice, have a conversation with the executive about it. But I think that's a point that's really been well made tonight. And then I would say if there are people who believe that Karratha is the location, then use the community infrastructure plan survey and really push it through there.
Any other questions?
I had one. I tried to make this into a question. So it's correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Wickham also have a splash pad as well as a pool? So it was mainly just in page 50 where it was the assessment of need. Right. I just think it's potentially left out of there that Wickham do also have a splash pad
in their current aquatic centre environment.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No?
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Johansson.
Correct me if I'm wrong, based on what I'm reading here on community feedback submissions, there's been 63 visitors to the infrastructure plan page and 0 submissions. And from a lot of the comments you read online and stuff, the program's too hard. They don't want to deal with it. They want us to do our job as councillors and make the decisions. And they want simple surveys where you can give them an easy poll. Where do you want something? Bang, bang. What do you want it like this or that? Bang, bang. Just simple answers. But people are sick of completing community feedback infrastructure plans. That's why we've had 0 submissions to date.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. Either we did excellent community consultation and everyone's absolutely happy with the document, or 2, we need to focus our efforts on doing it a bit more. And at our councillor catch up this afternoon, those concerns were raised around potentially we might need to re-engage with the community to really get them invested back into the CIP to get some submissions in. So I will be letting the thoughts of councillors know, of the thoughts of councillors known to the CEO, and we can keep continuing to work on that CIP draft and hopefully get some further community engagement and submissions as part of that.
And I think if I'm to understand the question is, can we make the feedback process simpler?
Yeah. Can we have a
is part
simple
of- is
poll
part
on
of what I-
the city page and
Well, I'm hearing you
a
say,
lot of things?
I'm hearing on one hand, can councillors just make the decision? Yes, councillors can make the decision. Is the question, can the survey be easier? We can take that on board. I think the process is fairly simple. Yeah, I would also just, as I said a moment ago, encourage councillors to, you play a really important part of connecting with the community and helping the city to reach people and to bring their opinions to the table. So that's, I would say if we've got 0 responses, then we could really use your assistance in encouraging people to be part of the process.
63 people have downloaded it. Submissions must be incoming.
63 people have looked at it and didn't feel they need to make any comments. It's such a great job.
Through the chair, obviously, we only became aware or were updated on the responses last week, and in response to seeing that 0 people have responded, we've actually got a bit of a communication plan to address that. So we're not relying on what we make it. I think we're always looking at the data and the feedback that's coming through, and we'll change our feedback opportunities and the way that we engage with the community depending on how they respond.
It's just one method of engaging with people.
Those people that still listen to the radio or trying to pump it on Triple M on Wednesday, I certainly still listen to it, but I am 43. Right. Moving on to 11 is development services reports. 11.1 being the housing development expression of interest for Bateman Development. Now, CEO, you've got an update.
Yeah,
on this?
actually. Look, I was just saying to the Mayor this afternoon that I'm going to make the decision to defer this at the CEO's discretion for a month. The reason for that is I received some additional information today as we're looking at our long-term financial planning and we're finalising our budgets for the year. The numbers, I think, in terms of our reserves, need to be reviewed, and I want to make sure that council has accurate numbers and has the information in front of them to make the correct decision. Deferring it by 1 month doesn't impact the project, and I think it allows council to have all the information they need to make a better decision. Sorry if I've stolen your thunder there, but Director, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Through the chair, I would suggest that you consider pulling the item as opposed to deferring it.
Pulling it, okay.
So that we can provide an updated report to council.
Okay, great.
I just want to make it really clear to council that we don't believe that there's an issue here with the proposal. We've done our due diligence and we think it's really solid. They are ready to go. The proponent was actually ready to come to a briefing tonight, but there's been additional modelling done to the LTFP between when we prepared the agenda item and now, and we think that there's a potentially big impact on the infrastructure reserve for 27-28 than initially anticipated. So we'd like to go back and test that, make sure we're happy with the outcome, and then come back to council to ensure that the impact is very clearly articulated for you to make a decision on.
There's one additional benefit by us taking this action, which is that we are of the view that we could still have further conversations with state government around state government contribution, and this will actually give us a little bit more time to progress that conversation. There is funding that was announced in the state government elections for government employee housing, and we believe that there might be an opportunity for us to earmark some of those funds to put towards this, and we'd much rather use state government funds for this project. So that's will give us a little bit of extra time to explore that.
Yeah, I had a meeting with the Premier last week.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Anyway, meeting with the Premier, and then also had a meeting with our new Minister, the Pilgrim Minister Sanderson, and working with the PDC, on that after the election, the bucket of money that was given from the state to Department of Communities for grow housing. The Pilbara has a certain amount of that allocated. So now we're pitching to the government to say, well, you know, you need to be a part of our housing solutions, and here's a project that is suitable for your needs. So this gives us a little bit more time as well to follow up with the state on our proposed development to see if they'd like to contribute some funds to helping develop it. Right, so that's
So no-
on the agenda for next week.
So did you want any question, or we just save those questions in for?
Yeah, until it's formally back on the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll leave it. 'Cause otherwise, I'd have to step out of the room anyway. So let's not talk about it.
Yeah, so bottom line, I'm withdrawing it from the agenda. We wanted to have this conversation in a public arena so everyone can follow the logic, and then we will bring it back and we will update the report according to the information we've got in front of us.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, you suggested if you had to step out for this item, if it was still on the agenda, is there a conflict of interest?
Yes.
If you declared anything at the beginning of the meeting?
It's not on the, well, no, because we're not discussing it, but I did. It's the same. It's the same item that was on the agenda. When was it? A month ago or 2 months ago. So I have made a declaration of interest for this item already, but because it's being brought back on the agenda, whenever that comes next month, I will have to make another one.
The mayor was aware that I was intending to withdraw it, so he was aware that he was aware that we were actually going to discuss withdrawing it as opposed to discussing the item itself. So I would suggest that free knowledge impacted whether or not he made a declaration around us.
Okay, so moving on to 12, I think I'm looking at the agenda going.
Yeah, we're at 12.
Okay, projects and infrastructure reports. 12.1 being the community facility name signs policy review with the officer's recommendation on page 67. And there's a council adopt the amended council policy TE01 community facility name signs as attached to this report. Does anyone have any questions? No? One question I had was, as we go through this policy and these community facility name signs, then if we've got not-for-profits that are in those buildings, are looking to maybe, I don't know, help them if they have to put signage up to subsidise their costs, if they are sort of through our policy forced to do certain signage.
Can I take that one on notice?
Sure can.
Yep. So just to clarify, it's would the city subsidise or assist not-for-profits in the cost of complying with this policy?
Correct.
Would that be?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, I'll take that on notice.
And sporting groups.
Well, not-for-profit, I would take that as a let's say associations as well. I would include community groups in that.
And does that include removing of any signs that don't meet the guidelines in the new facility name report?
I'll need to take that on notice as well. I'm not 100% sure if a removal of signs is part of the policy or if this is just applying to the application of new signs. So I'll just take that on notice.
Okay, any other questions? 12.2 is the supplier of reticulation pipe and associated fittings. The request to call for tender with the officer's recommendation on page 72. And that is the council agreed to invite tenders for the supply of reticulation pipe and associated fittings for a period of 3 years with 2 times 1 year extension options, exercisable at sole discretion of the city and in accordance with the scope of works as outlined in this report. Does anyone have any questions? Going out for tender? No. Okay, 12.3. 12.3 is weed management from the annual electors meeting with the officer's recommendation on page 76. and that is that Council 1, note the information contained in this report as it relates to the city's current integrated weed management plan, and 2, continue to investigate options to improve weed management practices, including A, investigate alternative weed management methods to glyphosate and alternative methods to spraying activities. B, work proactively with contractors and collaborate on weed management techniques to reduce chemical usage, and schedule 6 chemicals on residential properties outside of the jurisdiction. And C, actively engage with property owners and agencies to manage weeds on non-city owned or vested management areas. Does anyone have any questions? The Office of Recommendation, Councillor Soffa.
Can someone advise where to find a copy of the integrated weed management plan? I've tried but can't find it, so I'm not sure what's in there.
Through the chair, I'll pass that to the manager.
Yeah, it's an internal document on our own systems. So it hasn't been shared publicly. It can be reviewed to see if it can be shared publicly or not.
Or even to councillors.
Yeah.
So that we know what it's referring to if we're going to endorse a recommendation or note the information that's within it. And then does that plan provide information on how different weed control methods completed, such as slashing, mowing, spraying and fogging, and are they coordinated or timed in relation to each other?
Through the chair, it does identify the control methods. Yeah. It does advise the best ways to do it. Just sometimes with like weather and contractor capacity and machineries, the perfect plan doesn't always line up. So we try and do it as best practice, as best possible. But it does outline those. It doesn't go into detail with fogging. That's a separate discussion. It's mainly around weed management, weed management integrated plan.
And sorry, and does it also cover off chemical use across other departments within the city of Karratha, and reviewing like the chemical use across more than just parks and gardens? Are they integrated?
In the integrated weed management plan, it doesn't cover that off. No, it was specific for just targeted weeds.
Yeah.
Plan.
The questions?
Johnson?
Up to you.
I suppose weed management is the one thing that every resident in Dampier is knocking on my door for. So, to be perfectly honest, there doesn't seem to be any progression of controlling the weeds in Dampier specifically is what I can talk for.
Question.
We have a plan, a strategy for weed management. Is it effective at the moment? Is it working efficiently? Is it changed? Are we short-staffed? How was it changed? I suppose a whole collection of questions.
Why don't do you want to take some of these questions on notice, because I do think we're covering a lot of ground, and it may actually be that we provide a more detailed response as to not only our weed management but also how we measure the effectiveness of that, which I think is, because I understand that within the community weed management is something that I hear a lot about as well. So, but I don't think that that's necessarily. I think it's. I think that this elector's resolution was about a particular response. I'm just cautioning council about broadening the scope away from what the electorate was asking, and I do think that it's absolutely your right to ask us questions about our management approach and how we measure the effectiveness. And some of the problems that we have in applying, our management plan. What are some of the things that make it easy? Some things that make it hard. It would be good to have a comprehensive discussion about that, and I'm happy to make that something that we can discuss in a little bit more depth. I think. Yes. Yeah, if that's okay with you, Councillor. And that's not about avoiding it. It's about saying, I think it's a big topic. It is very big. It's a big topic. 100%. And yeah, and don't worry, my husband was one of the people who I had to explain to him how to use Report It because he was getting annoyed with the weeds where he rides his bike. So I completely understand it's something that we all are passionate about.
And it is like that's the first protocol I say to everybody, report it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I could ask respectfully if we can talk about the broader issue of weed management, and this particular motion, as I understand it, was related to the about some of the alternatives to weed management practices, particularly looking at non-chemical or different chemical approaches and using natural methods, and that's something I think which is a lot of people are really interested in.
Councillor Johansson.
2 questions. One on the reported sort of thing. Why is it up to the ratepayers to report it? I think that's where part of the ratepayer fatigue setting in. You know, we've reported many things on the reported sort of platform, and it feels like a lot of the things they're ongoing recycling things. Shouldn't there be a schedule for the weeds already, that we shouldn't have to wait for ratepayers to report it? I don't know.
So, Councillor, you're 100% right. So we do actually have a methodical program of work that runs all year round, right? What the report does is it allows us to deal with spot issues. So if they're, so for example, we've got people who are currently scheduled to work through Bulgara, and we've got a spot issue in nickel. Someone can say, hey, there's a problem. It allows us to have the best of both worlds, a schedule, but also be able to throw a response at a particular problem in real time. So there's a need for both. And I think if we didn't have something like Reporter, we would have known that there's a problem. This at least is a way that community members can let us know that there's something that we need to respond to. And that's our mechanism for being able to be on the ball. That doesn't mean that we don't have a schedule, because we do have a schedule, and that's and we also have a site on our website where we actually explain to people where we are at different times and where the slashing programs are, and if you can actually follow that schedule as well. So I'm happy to just say, I don't know if that answers it.
Sort of does, and it flows into the second to further improve the operational tracking. Can that be updated to like the Facebook page too, on a even a monthly basis would be handy, like a schedule of what parks are going to be sprayed and stuff, so parents can avoid going to Bain West Park on the 20th of May because it's going to be being sprayed that sort of weekend.
Sure, we have some notification processes, but can I take that on notice? So your question is, could it be on Facebook?
Yeah, a lot of residents are just using Facebook. It's just easier, it's convenient than going to a website and looking for where the schedule's hidden.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's take that one on notice.
Through the chair, it is on the website. We update it monthly.
Yeah, that was my understanding. So
what
it
we
might
achieved and what we're aiming to achieve for the following month.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but let's take that one on notice as to whether or not we can include other methods of communication. Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor.
I'll just yes, and obviously the whole motion from the electors meeting was the adoption of the policy priorities and biological control methods over chemical use within the city. So that was the whole main of the motion. So I suppose obviously they're concerned about the chemical use. I suppose can also in the policy, obviously the city's tried lots of different methods of trying not to use chemicals, but I don't think that's well known. So can we maybe also state in that these are the methods we've already tried in the past, and I think just make the community aware that we are going to try. Obviously, we tried the steam one recently, but I think there has been a few over the years that since I've been here, for instance, it'd be good to actually list that so people are aware that we are actively looking for other alternatives. It's not something that we want to keep using, but we have to because there's no other method to control the weeds. So,
thanks. I'll take that suggestion on notice. Yeah.
I've got a question too.
Sure.
What's the timeline? Because I think for good governance, for us as the council and the community member putting forward the motion, in all of these things that we go to pursue, there should be some sort of timeline
Yeah.
that we're looking to achieve that sort of whatever it is, we should achieve it by.
Yeah.
So that we know that it's coming back within a certain time frame.
Yeah.
The community knows it's coming back. So my question is, can we add timelines? And they're obviously at the discretion of the administration on how long they feel think they can achieve it.
I think it's a really good suggestion, Mr. Mayor. So I think let's take that away and bring back a response. I think the reason it's worded the way it is, continue to investigate, is that it is actually it's an ongoing process. And having worked in other councils, I can tell you that every council has this as an ongoing piece of work. And I also know that the local government industry has groups of experts who are constantly working on weed management and looking at what's happening around the world. So it's actually an active piece of work in every council and in the industry. But in terms of the point that you're making, which is to perhaps put a little bit of structure around it, I think what we could do is perhaps put together a bit of an action plan where we're providing council with some regular updates. And, it might be that we've provided a quarterly update on some of the actions that we've taken, some of the methods that have been assessed, some of the information that's coming through, and maintain that. So if I can take that on notice, I'll come back with a suggestion of what that plan might look like.
Yes.
And then it's a little bit less open-ended, even though the team are actually dealing with this ongoing.
Excellent. Any other questions on weed management? No? All right, 12.4 is the Consey Bay Access Request and Project Update as part of our annual directors meeting. The office recommendation on page 81, and that is that council note the Murrujuga Aboriginal Corporation own in freehold the Murrujuga National Park and jointly manage with the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. And 2, note a request has been sent to Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions asking for the motion from the city's annual electors meeting to be shared with Murrujuga Aboriginal Corporation and a response provided to the city in relation to the immediate reopening of the access track. Do you have any questions?
My question, could the city perhaps invite the Murrujuga Aboriginal Corporation, a representative from there, to come and brief us at a workshop around what they're doing and their intentions?
I'm happy to take that on notice, yeah.
Any other questions? My question would be the same as we've got this, we're doing this, but it's a community that's requested it, so we need a sort of a timeline or an update on getting feedback back about an update. We go through these things. Okay. 12.5 is the construction and delivery of the footpath and concrete program. Request to call for tender. The officer's recommendation on page 85. And as the council agreed to invite tenders for construction and delivery of the footpath and concrete program for a period of 18 months in accordance with the scope of works as outlined in this report. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm running out of words in my throat. Yes, does anyone have any questions around the delivery of footpath and concrete? Press for tender. Nope. Questions yet, because we're going out for tender, I guess. Okay.
Is it limited to only those 10 footpaths? Like, can more be added?
Through the chair, there is a provisional sum to do additional footpaths.
Okay.
The 10 listed are shovel-ready projects.
Thanks.
Okay, 13.
Yeah, sorry. I suppose the only thing is it's been so problematic by the city. Is there potential to even bring it less, to pull it back even further, to divide up these, or I don't know anything about footpaths, like are these kilometres long altogether? Is there potential to even break them down further?
I guess the first thing is that when you go up to tender, you don't know what companies are out there that are now available to work, and they come and see, they go, oh, there's a tender available, concrete and footpaths. So we don't know what companies are going to tender to begin with.
Well, there's two parts to the situation, councillor. So we've got our footpath program, the 10-year footpath program, and then we've got the contractor who's doing the work and is supplying doing the supply and install, if you like. The issue that we've had is that the contractor has withdrawn now. So, I think, if I'm understanding your question, if we slowed it down or if we had less footpaths, would it make it easier for the contractor? Is that kind of your
It kind of like we've lost 3 in 3 years, pretty much is what the report said.
Yeah,
which is a lot.
Well, it reflects the difficulty of working in the trades and concreting area at the moment. It's reflective of the broader construction sort of market. So I think we're going through. We've got our program of work. We're going out and seeking participants to kind of deliver that work. If we can't find through a tender process the right parties, then we'll have to look at other options. But I think at the moment this is our best method for finding out who's out there and who's willing to do the work.
Through the chair, just on that one as well, because we've asked for an 18-month contract and we're not going to stipulate deadlines, because it could be a small business which has a small team that does it, but it could be someone that mobilises a lot more staff and could do it a lot quicker. So we're not going to stipulate that, to try and have it a bit broader.
Yeah, right.
And no further questions? Right, moving on to 13, which is the Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1 is the items for information only, with the officer recommendation on page 90, and that is that we note the following information items from the Community Experience Update for March, concessions on fees for city facilities, the Development Services Update, the Register of Documents stamped with the Common Seal, fee waiver policy and 24-hour library access trial from the annual electors meeting, which we might jump to and talk through, and then the May 2025 public briefing notes and table of report changes. So those lists of those updates and notifications from the CEO's report are listed. Are there any questions on any of them contained within that CEO report? Councillor Nunn.
Just 2 questions, please. One, and this is definitely on notice, are we able to get an update on how the KLP Cafe is tracking, given the, I guess, previous history of small business running it? Just curious as to how it is going now that we are running it internally. Second question is for Director of Development Services. Do we have an idea of when either of those DAs will be presented at DAP? And have we got a secondary person that can sit on the DAP, because one of those 2 items I will be excused from?
So we'll take those questions one at a time. Director, did you want to respond to the first question about KLP Cafe?
Yes, through the chair. In relation to the KLP Cafe, we can provide some information and stats on that service. We have, however, pushed out an expression of interest to see if there are local businesses who may be interested in taking up that location, and we have had an interest from one particular party who we are following a process with at this current time.
And Director, did you want to mention about the JDAP involvement and timeframes?
Through the chair, I'll take it on notice in terms of potential meeting dates, but as you're aware, Councillor Nunn, it'll depend on when the responsible authority report is eventually submitted to the DAP. But my understanding is that the 2 proxy members are both in line to do training very shortly and should be available.
I can confirm the 2 proxy members have done the training. So Councillor Nunn, Councillor Simpson and myself are both what would the word be? It's not fully formed. Yeah, trained. We're both trained. Yeah, so that shouldn't be an issue in the immediate future. Any other questions on those items for information?
Yes, I just have one, both the Wickham Hub and the Youth Shed. I just noticed that it's excellent saying that they've got a free bus service to run the kids home. I know it was an issue in the past. Can we just confirm who's actually running the bus service? Is it in-house or is it a third-party provider?
Yes, through the chair. So we do engage a third party to provide that service, but our staff are on the bus at the time.
So it was great to see that the issue's been solved. So well done.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I'm just going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so because this was also from our annual electors meeting, are there any questions on the fee waiver policy and 24-hour library access trial?
Why are they joined together? Not
The fee waiver policy and
through the chair, they're not joined
together.
It's just an update of each. Yep.
Just because we didn't have a report to bring back, we wanted to provide council with a status update that it hadn't been got. It's been correct.
Any other questions on that one? No? Okay, so we move to 14, which is motions of which person has been given. There's been none. 15 questions by members of which students has been given. There's none. 16 urgent business approved by the person presiding by decision. I have nothing. And then 17 is matters behind closed doors, but it's just some attachments that relate to item 11.1. So that is the public briefing. Ask if anyone wants approval for leave, and then that's when you stick your hand up, and then we'll get to vote decide if we're granting it or not. Okay, thank you everyone. I understand dinner is here. There's lasagna.
We'll say goodbye to the public first.
The public, if you're struggling at home, there might be some work. Come on now.
Finished? Right, thank you.